Hello, do-it-yourselfers. Today we are prepping the outside of a house for a fresh coat of paint and then painting it. Step 1 today is getting the dirt off. Painting over a dirty surface is never a good idea and will lead to pain and suffering in the future. A pressure washer is the most effective tool for this job. Pressure washer wands come with different tips that affect the width of the fan. I prefer to use a 15 or 20 degree fan. When pressure washing, keep the wand within a foot or so from what we are washing. We may have to get closer to get some tough spots, but further away is not very effective. Also make sure to wash every inch of the surface that is to be painted. There is one important difference to pressure washing when painting versus just to clean up, especially on aluminum or steel siding. Old metal siding gets a film of chalk over it, which does take some effort to get off, namely getting every inch with the pressure washer wand fairly close and not just rinsing it off. If we are just washing the house or structure with no plans to paint it anytime soon, do not pressure wash the chalk off of your siding. As we can see here, taking the chalk off can actually create a drastic change in appearance. On this particular metal siding, tons of this chalk was washing off. Painting over this layer of chalk will lead to bad adhesion of your paint and a lot of peeling. Step 2 today, unfortunately, is scraping. Wood trim in particular around the house may need the attention of a putty knife. You want to scrape from multiple directions if possible and make sure everything loose is off. Don't apply too much pressure when scraping. Metal is much harder and stronger than paint, so in some instances with a lot of pressure you can keep scraping paint that is still bonded to the substrate perfectly fine. It is important that you get all loose paint off, otherwise your new paint will immediately be peeling. Step 3 today is priming. Once bare wood is exposed, use an exterior primer. Primer is mostly a bonding agent and will bond much better to raw surfaces. We are using this primer right here. Latex primer is perfectly fine for raw wood. There is no need for an oil primer unless an oil-based stain and varnish or similar products have been used on the wood in the past. For the raw wood with a decent coat, don't stretch the primer too far and work the primer into the wood well with the brush. The sun does dry up the paint or primer brush much faster than normal, so the shape of the brush will not hold very well for very long. The sun can also do a number on our skin, so if the back of your neck is getting cooked, we can always use a rag or two for additional sun protection in a pinch. Spot priming is fine in a lot of instances, which means just priming where the raw wood is, like on this casing here. On a casing like this window, however, where there was hardly any paint left, it is better just to coat the entire piece of trim. Step 4 is weatherproofing. If there are any gaps between window casings and siding, that is an opportunity for water to trespass where we don't want it. Other wood-to-wood cracks should also be caulked. When caulking, depress the handle with steady pressure and move the caulk gun with consistent speed to apply a nice even bead. Pro tip, have a water rag handy and keep a finger damp so we can smooth the caulk and not leave it all ugly and lumpy. Here are 2 examples of the ugly and lumpy caulk we are trying to avoid. Much worse is possible as well, so just make sure to make it pretty. It only takes a few extra seconds and looks so much better. Step 5 today is masking off to paint trim. We generally paint the trim first, so that means taping off windows to get the casings ready. The most efficient tool for this job is this tape and paper hand masker. Put it together like so, paper on first, then feed the tape under the knob that sticks out and adhere it to the paper. Generally, we discard the first foot or so. Sometimes it is a little cattywampus. Sometimes we are painting everything except the glass, so in this example we are only taping off the glass. When taping like this to prepare for spraying, you want to tape every single seam, making it airtight so nothing gets through. Other times the window itself is vinyl that cleaned up nicely or is on the newer side and we are only painting the casing. In this situation we tape off the entire window sash, just leaving the casing exposed like in this example here. Step 6 is painting the trim. For the fascia, soffit, and gutters, there usually isn't much that needs taped off. Just use a shield to stop overspray from getting on the shingles. When spraying, we typically use a fine tip, something like a 210 to 312 range. Never stop moving when pulling the paint trigger. Also, you want to be in motion before depressing the trigger and let go before you stop moving. The paint will pile up very quickly and leave a nasty heavy if we use poor spraying technique. One shield isn't enough for a long smooth stroke with the sprayer, so doubling them up is ideal. The soffit, fascia, and gutters are the most time-consuming part of the trim typically. Once all that is done, we can move to the window trim, which usually goes much quicker. On occasion, some of the trim is the same color as the main house, which really makes doing the trim a more efficient part of the job. Usually, however, the window trim is a separate color. In this example here, the window trim is going white and the base of the house will not be the same. Make sure to spray the trim from the angles necessary to get paint on the edges. If you only spray directly on the face, the entire inside edge will not look so nice. Unfortunately, once all the trim is done, it is time to tape again. So step 7 is taping part 2. We will be masking off everything we have just painted trim color. We prefer not to tape anything we have painted the same day to give the paint a chance to harden up some and bond better to the surfaces. Also, we generally use blue tape on the masker for this because it is a little less sticky, and with the paint being so new, we want to be a little more delicate than normal. We are also using blue tape on the underside of the soffit and masking all the soffit fascia and gutters as well. We usually do 2 rows of paper for this part of the trim so it wraps up around the gutter so no overspray gets on our brand new looking trim. Now it's time for the easy part, which is spraying the siding. You do need to just use a sprayer to get good at it, but to revisit a few tips, make sure you're moving your arm at an appropriate speed and never stopping while the trigger is depressed. Make sure to angle the spray to hit the underside of the siding if it is ran horizontally like it is here. Once the side is fully sprayed and dried, we are ready to take the tape off and reveal the final result. Make sure to use some masking tape to wrap the ends of any extension ladders where they will come in contact with the house. The paint is still new and more vulnerable to scratches, dings, or smudges, especially if your ladder is dirty. On a side note, if you met any new friends today, hopefully you didn't paint them. Step 9 is the big unveil and cleanup. Pull all your tape and paper down somewhat gently. There may be a few spots where you need to get a brush out and do a touch-up, but this should be minimal. Don't forget to also clean your paint sprayer out. That is an important part of the job. Level up your house.